Welcome to Global Atheist News, the weekly show that reviews the news that might be of interest to non-believers. Our first item today refers to Canada, where, thanks to Conrad Didiodato, our correspondent on Roman Catholic matters, we have this report of yet another incident of sexual abuse by a priest. This comes from the Canadian district in Saskatchewan of Saskatoon. There it is. The Roman Catholic Diocese of Saskatoon acted swiftly after finding out one of their priests was charged with sexual assault. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police announced that they charged Father Anthony Atta of Lake Lenore with sexual assault, sexual interference, and sexual exploitation. Royal Canadian Mounted Police say the incidents allegedly occurred between September the 1st and November the 4th, 2020. As soon as the diocese learned of these charges, Father Anthony Atta was removed from ministry, said Kipli Lukan Yaworski, Communications Coordinator, Roman Catholic Diocese of Saskatoon. The diocese will be cooperating fully with police on this matter and is unable to respond to questions and comments on the case at this time while it is under investigation and/or before the courts. The Roman Catholic Diocese of Saskatoon takes the matter of sexual abuse and sexual misconduct very seriously and is committed to the care and support of victims of sexual abuse, added Yaworski. The Humboldt Royal Canadian Mounted Police arrested the 45-year-old priest after receiving multiple reports of incidents of a sexual nature, and the case will be scheduled in the near future. We go to India, where events have been boiling up over censorship of Amazon Prime material. This report from AAI's Development Director, Manoj John.
An Indian political drama on Amazon Prime has been forced to edit out scenes because it was accused of being an insult to Hindu gods. This is the first time that OTT streaming platforms are subjected to government censorship in India. Tandav, a gritty political drama streamed on Amazon Prime, which is one of the world's largest streaming platforms, had faced growing controversy since it was launched last week over allegations that it had hurt Hindu religious sentiments and insulted the office of the Prime Minister. A right-wing Hindu nationalist group, politicians with the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, that is BJP, and another BJP-supported group representing members of India's lower caste were among those who had filed police complaints against director of Tandav and Amazon Prime. Tandav is latest in a wave of bolder, more progressive and political Indian web series which have debuted on Netflix and Amazon Prime over the past year and been met with a fierce backlash from right-wing Hindu groups and BJP politicians. The censorship of the show is seen as indicative of the shrinking space for creative freedom under the Hindu nationalist BJP government. In November, streaming platforms were brought under the control of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting for the first time, leading to fears that content will be subjected to the same tight controls as traditional film and television platforms in India.
Thank you, Manoj. We now go to Cyprus, the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea, where an artist is threatened due to his allegedly blasphemic artwork.
In Cyprus, an artist and teacher is under investigation for artworks derogatory of religion. The End Blasphemy Laws Coalition is concerned by the ongoing investigation launched against teacher and painter George Gavriel following accusations that some of his artworks were derogatory of religion. In September 2020, Gabriel was placed under investigation by the Ministry of Education following complaints that his paintings, which he published on his personal Facebook account, are derogatory of religion. Some of his artworks, which he describes as anti-establishment, are religion-themed, with one depicting a naked Jesus and another a dog urinating on the Archbishop. Archbishop Chrysostomos of Cyprus is reported to be among the complainants. Gabriel stands accused of possible defamation of the educational service in general, or his position in particular, or the possibility of shaking the public's trust in the educational service and possible omission to behave properly to the public. Commenting following the launch of the investigation, Gabriel stated, "The artist should not be worrying about any reactions and be afraid to express himself, because then neither he nor society will be able to move forward. I call these works anti-establishment art, as they oppose the current corrupt system," adding that art should be at the service of society and that he creates works against social injustice and encourages the reaction of citizens to address problems.
Thank you, Angelos Sophocleos, our correspondent from Cyprus. Meanwhile, in Honduras, Central America, legislators are pushing a constitutional reform through Congress that would make it virtually impossible to legalize abortion in the country now or in the future. You may remember we reported last week that Argentina had just legalized abortion, and the fear in Honduras is that that will spur reform in Latin America. The minister says this measure, called a shield against abortion by its proponents, comes in response to the feminist Green Wave movement sweeping across Latin America that recently achieved its biggest victory yet with the legalization of abortion in Argentina. "It's a shield to stop the Green Wave," said Cristina Alvarado, a representative of the Women's Movement for Peace. In Honduras, there is an absolute violation of the reproductive rights of women and girls. Honduras is one of 4 countries in Latin America that prohibits abortion under any circumstance, and the only one to also prohibit emergency contraceptives, even in the case of rape. The new measure, which is likely to pass within the week, would require at least 3/4 of Congress to vote in favor of modifying the country's abortion law for any changes to be enacted, raising the vote threshold above what is normally necessary for constitutional reforms to a level that will be almost impossible to overcome. It sets a precedent that activists fear could be replicated across the region to halt the advance of reproductive rights for women. Now, Nigeria. AAI's lawyers were in court yesterday to hear the appeal court's decision in the cases of Yahya Sharif Aminu and Umar Farouk. Our lawyers represented them, these 2 young men, 22 and 13 years old, respectively, who were accused of blasphemy back in August 2020. And in the same closed Kano courtroom on the same day in August last year, both were found guilty by Justice Kadu Aliyu Mohammed Kani. Neither were represented by legal counsel, and no evidence was produced in either case. The court relied upon admissions of guilt extracted by police through interrogations that were not video recorded. At the original trial, the judge ordered that Yahya be hanged from the neck until dead, and Umar be imprisoned for 10 years with menial labor. The convicts were granted 30 days to appeal, rather than the normal 90 days, and were held incommunicado with no access to lawyers. AAI raised funds to appeal their cases and engaged the lawyers I showed in the earlier picture to file and argue their appeals. Yesterday, the court was so crowded with people wanting to witness events that an extra gallery had to be cleared to make room. People took their seats, and the decision in Umar's case was announced first. Chief Judge Justice N.S. Umar and Justice Naziru Saminu's decision was that Umar had been convicted in error, and the conviction is to be set aside, and Umar must be discharged and acquitted. The findings in Yahaya's case were identical, and his conviction was quashed. But instead of declaring him discharged and acquitted, the judges remitted him back to the Sharia court for a retrial. We wonder why such different outcomes for two cases in which the facts were essentially the same. We must speculate, but Yahaya's case had received huge media coverage, while Umar's case had not. Furthermore, Yahaya's case had incited mobs in the streets of Kanu, and his father's house was destroyed by fire. As expected, the packed courtroom was emotionally charged with frequent shouts of Allahu Akbar coming from the crowd. It would have taken a brave judge to set Yahaya free against that backdrop. Justices Umar and Saminu were not brave. They opted to let another court decide Yahaya's fate. Now that this case is over, we have to get Umar released from prison. This involves obtaining a signed warrant from the court and presenting it at the prison. Our lawyers were hoping to do that today, but the official signatory was not available, so we will try again on Monday. We should all remember Kanu State has the option to appeal yesterday's decision if they are minded to keep this child in prison. If they do, we will appeal to a higher court. We also have to decide what to do about Yahaya's case. If we return to the Sharia court as ordered by the appeal court, the argument will revolve around due process, and the appeal court has already found that wanting. Furthermore, the Sharia court is not competent to consider other motions, especially our contention that the penal Sharia code is incompatible with the provisions of the Federal Constitution of Nigeria. If we get a court to rule in favor of that argument, the foundations upon which blasphemy laws in Nigeria rest will be swept away, and we will be free to challenge blasphemy laws in every state of the Federation. So, following a case conference today, our lawyers decided to file an appeal at the Federal Court of Appeal to have yesterday's decision set aside. This should enable Yahaya to be set free and to have the constitutionality of blasphemy laws in Kanu put under the microscope. Whatever happens, we will have to work to have Umar released from prison and transferred to a safe location and to have Yahaya set free. We're deeply grateful to the many people who supported our GoFundMe, I will add this to the description underneath, that enabled us to get this far. But we spent more than we raised on this first appeal, and we now need to fund at least one further appeal. Please give something to help these young people and to help us challenge blasphemy laws in Nigeria. Now, some good news. In the USA, watch this.
Victory! New American anti-female genital mutilation law in the United States of America. So there is a new American anti-FGM law that closes religious and cultural loopholes. This is, everyone was concerned about the events of January 6th. Well, something very good happened the day after. On January 7th, 2021, the United States tightened the ban on the, quote, abhorrent practice of female genital mutilation, aka FGM, attempting to end the ancient ritual that million girls worldwide endure. By voting the, quote, Stop FGM Act into law, federal authorities can increase the maximum jail sentence for those who perform FGM from 5 to 10 years. The new law closes loopholes, extending the span of punishable offenses relating to FGM. The law specifies that, quote, Congress has the affirmative power to prohibit this conduct. Part of the law in Section 3C reads, quote, It shall not be a defense to a prosecution under this section that female genital mutilation is required as a matter of religion, custom, tradition, ritual, or standard practice, end quote. A legal expert on FGM with the global rights group Equality Now, Divya Srinivasan, advises that the new law will help the U.S. government persuade other countries to act. Quote, ending FGM is part of the U.S. foreign policy, so it's important for their credibility that they have strong laws themselves, she added.
Finally, it is with great regret that I announce the resignation of Michael Sherlock from the position of Executive Director of Atheist Alliance International, effective from today. Michael holds down 2 demanding jobs and lives in a time zone that means getting up at 4 a.m. several days a week. He has realized it is impossible to do this long term. To achieve anything like a reasonable work-life balance, something had to give. He said, It is with great sadness that I resign from AAI. I firmly believe AAI is the only atheist organization that can make a real difference to the lives of atheists around the world. The people at AAI are genuine and dedicated. I will miss them. Michael served as executive director for almost a year. He had astonishing energy and passion for his work and brought us many new connections and innovative ideas. He championed the formation of our advisory council and worked to grow the influence of our affiliates and regional directors. We are sorry to see him go. The board will take some time to consider the organization's future structure. In the meantime, Bill Flavelle, our vice president, will take the reins as interim executive director. We wish him well. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, do everything you can if you've enjoyed this newscast, and join us again this time at the same locations next week.